Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Racing Forum YouTube for another big race preview. This weekend's Grade 1 Sword Dancer, the first of 5 Grade 1s on Saturday at Saratoga. It is Travers Day. I'm Gino Buccola along with David Aragona to talk about one of these big 5 Grade 1 races on Saturday. David, let's take a look at the field for the Sword Dancer, which will go as race number 9 on August the 24th. First of 5 consecutive Grade 1s, one of the shorter fields and probably one of the more straightforward races that we'll have of these 5 Grade 1s, where you have Silver Knott and Measure Time. They will be the top 2 in here. They will take a lot of the betting support. They're both runners for the Appleby Godolphin Charge, and they both seem to have the speed of the race. So that's what makes it a little bit difficult when you're trying to handicap and look at the 2 of them.
Yeah, I guess in the absence of a Chad Brown runner, we've got to say thank you to Charlie Appleby for supporting these Grade 1 turf races in New York. And it's kind of interesting that he's running both of these horses in the Sword Dancer, because you would think that these are 2 of the best turf horses that he currently has stabled in the United States. And both of them look like potential Breeders' Cup turf candidates. And I guess it's a trial to see which one he really wants to point to that race, particularly for Measured Time, who is stretching out to this 1.5 mile distance for the first time.
Yeah, he's a bit of the more of the wild card in here, as Silver Knott has become this proven marathon turf horse. And that's really been the difference for him this year. We could take a look at the Timeform US pace projector and see what they think with Grand Sonata up front. I'm a little curious about this one, David, mainly because Grand Sonata is just more of a horse that is coming out of shorter races. So I'm not sure if he's actually going to be a horse who the intent is to get aggressive with him. This might just be more that he's coming out of these races going a little bit shorter, and they just project him in quicker early paces, because they've been pretty aggressive with Silver Knott, but he also can sit off the pace. So I guess I'm a little curious to see if this will play out how Timeform US has it.
Yeah, we always used to give this caveat when I would do these videos with Craig, that the projections in these marathon turf races, I think you have to take with a grain of salt, because the horses that are coming out of some faster paced route races, going conventional distances of 1 mile and a 16th, 1 mile and an eighth, are always going to have faster pace figures than those that routinely run in these true marathons, the 1 mile and 3/8, 1.5 mile distances like Silver Knott has recently. So I think a lot of it is going to be up to the jockey tactics, and you would have to imagine that Flavien Prat will be looking to send Silver Knott to the front end, especially given how comfortable he looked getting that same kind of trip up on the front end last time out in the Bowling Green.
Let's go horse by horse through this field, named for the Hall of Famer Sword Dancer, the 1959 Horse of the Year. We'll start things out with the number 1, Soldier Rising, in here. And David, what a cool horse to own. He loves to run second. He's a 9-time stakes runner-up and 4 graded stakes in a row where he's finished second. The problem is he's 0 for his last 11. He just doesn't win races a whole ton. And with his running style, he's just sort of up against it in a lot of these fields where he has to come and make his move after the horses with the tactical speed do. Let's talk about Soldier Rising from the inside.
Yeah, I don't believe Soldier Rising has ever won a stakes race, unbelievably. I think he's placed in plenty of Grade 1 races, including this Sword Dancer last season, but he just can't seem to get the job done against top-level competition. A couple times it looks like he does have some hang in him, but most of the time it just feels like he's running into better horses in these Grade 1 races, and it feels like that might be the case once again on Saturday, given the presence of these 2 Charlie Appleby runners. He's a really nice horse. He reliably shows up every time. I just have trouble viewing him as a win candidate in this race.
Major player coming is the number 2, Measured Time, who is a multiple Group 1 winner, proven at Saratoga. I guess the real question for him would be distance, because this is not necessarily his best distance. He's only raced 1 time at 1.5 miles, and everything else has been shorter than this. But with these horses going long on the turf, you're kind of in a weird spot sometimes, right? Because if you're not a miler, then you better be 1.5 miles. Otherwise, there's sort of like that in-between distance for you. So I think they take a shot here with Measured Time, who he's just done so little wrong in his career, David, right? He's 6 for 8. He has that other runner-up effort, and he's just a really nice horse.
Yeah, and I think I misspoke earlier. He does have that prior race going the 1.5 miles on the all-weather track at Kempton in England. So first time trying it on the turf. Here we're taking a look at his most recent turf victory, his first start in the United States in the Manhattan, and this was an impressive effort. He was never towards the inside this day. William Buick seemed content to have him outside of other horses every step of the way, but didn't matter that he covered all that ground, because he was just so far superior to the field that he beat, which included his stablemate Nation's Pride, who came back to win the Arlington Million in his next start. So measured time, he is a really talented runner. The distance is a question mark, but he is the half brother to Rebels Romance, that Breeders' Cup Turf winner from a couple seasons prior, who has been very effective going the mile-and-a-half distance. He's been a little headstrong at different points in his career, measured time has, so I think maybe that's one of the reasons why they've kept him towards the shorter distances, but seems like he's really maturing now, coming into his own as a 4-year-old, so he's one that I think might have the ability to handle the extra distance.
Right next door is Far Bridge, another come from behinder. This is your grade 1 Belmont Derby winner from 2023. He hasn't really seemed like he's progressed all that much this year, kind of running along in the same speed figures as last year, David. He does have a pretty good third in the Manhattan, but that was behind measured time, who he's going to have to deal with again today.
You know, if not for the presence of these two formidable looking Appleby runners, this is a horse that I might have been interested to take a shot with in this race, because Farbridge really got an impossible trip last time in that United Nations. That was a turf course at Monmouth that I think was favoring horses that raced down towards the rail. They had taken temporary rails down that week, and it seemed like inside paths were really the preferred place to be on the racetrack at Monmouth for the United Nations. And Farbridge broke from post 11 and was just hung out wide every step of the way. You can't go 3 to 4 wide around 3 turns in a turf race and expect to have success. So no big surprise that he was not effective at the end of that race, but he's run well against some of these tougher horses in the past. He was just no match for measured time too back in the Manhattan. He's another one who's not exactly proven going the mile-and-a-half distance. So I couldn't quite pull the trigger putting him on top, but he's a horse that I would want to use in exactas and trifectas.
And number 4 is Silver Knott. And this year, he's just been a different horse. 3 races going the longest distances of his career, all victories. Is it the maturity as a 4-year-old? Is it the move to the more, marathon distance where he can just relax a little bit? Whatever the combination is, David, he's just been a brand new animal. All 3 victories with Flavien Prat aboard. He's proven at Saratoga. So this just makes a lot of sense for him. He's sort of at the top of this division right now. And with his speed, also the ability to sit off a little bit, feels like he's the proven horse and the one to beat in here.
Yeah, in some ways, his emergence this season has been a little bit surprising because he always seemed to cut below the best 3-year-olds last season, running in that series of graded stakes races in a division that seemed pretty strong for that group of 3-year-olds back in 2023. But you look at his pedigree, he was always bred to go these marathon distances, just a ton of stamina breeding on the bottom side. And Charlie Appleby finally stretched him out to the mile-and-a-half in the Elkhorn, and he's been unstoppable since then. We just took a look at his Bowling Green victory last time out at Saratoga, where he really never had an anxious moment against a group of overmatched runners, including Soldier Rising, who we just talked about. He's got tactical speed. He can carry his speed over these longer distances. He is the horse to beat in this race, given his proven form, but he is facing a pretty tough rival. I think a tougher rival than he's faced in any of his U.S. starts so far in stablemate measured time.
Yeah, I'd agree. Silver Knott will have to be facing a very, very tough rival that he knows pretty well, his stablemate there. Right next door, Pioneer Spirit, who's 0 for the last 7, though, and hasn't really been close in the last 6 races. Seems like they're just trying to figure out what to do with this guy right now, David. They go from 2 miles, cut back to 1 mile and an eighth, then they stay in a race that was off the turf, now trying another time going long on the grass. I just don't know how to get a feel for him right now.
Yeah, he was 3rd in this race last year, a distantly beaten 3rd. It feels like this is a much tougher edition of the Sword Dancer in 2024 than it was a year ago. So he would just have to really improve, not only on that race, but especially on his recent form, because it feels like he just hasn't come back as quite the same horse now during his 5-year-old season.
We spoke a few minutes ago about Far Bridge, who comes out of the United Nations. Grand Sonata also comes out of that race, and I believe Lucia has a backtrack replay for us of that United Nations last time out, where Grand Sonata was 2nd, beaten just a nose, and he was chasing a lone speed winner this day, David. So the race didn't shape up all that well for him, and just sort of by process of default in this race, he should be a little bit closer, going a little longer in here without all that much proven speed. He could probably carve himself out a spot somewhere in the top 3 here, but is he at this quality to deal with the 2 Appleby runners?
Yeah, it was really a tale of 2 trips in the United Nations last time between him and Far Bridge, who we already talked about. Whereas Far Bridge was wide around every turn, Grand Sonata was on the inside, saving all that ground in that coveted path down on the inside. So I think that really enhanced his ultimate finish in that race. He only lost by a nose to Get Smokin', who set the pace every step of the way. I'm still not totally convinced that Grand Sonata is a grade 1 quality horse just in general, but especially going these mile-and-a-half distances. So he's got to prove it to me once again. again. He will be a nice price in this race. I don't think he's going to take too much money, even off that runner-up finish last time in the UN, but still, he's a horse that I would rather use or rather pass over for some others that are going to be similar prices.
Yeah, he's a grade 3 winner. He won 3 of his first 5 starts, but he's just won for his last 16 since. So maybe a horse too was a little more precocious and hasn't really been able to take those big steps forward. Okay, it's the moment of truth, David, but I couldn't really get too cute in this race. I don't think you really got too outside the box in here either. Let's look at the selections. You're going to have measured time on top, I believe, with the 2 on top of the 4 and the 3.
Yeah, I put measured time on top. It's a tough decision between these two Appleby runners. Obviously, Silver Knott is the one with the proven form going the distance. I've just been really impressed by the progression from measured time this season. I think it's interesting that they're giving him this trial run, going the marathon distance, probably thinking about him as a Breeders' Cup Turf candidate. I think it's worth pointing out that William Buick is riding this one. Not that Appleby was going to take Pratt off Silver Knott so that Buick's riding the preferred one. I wouldn't read too much into that. But Buick coming over, I think, does mean something. And he is a full horse still, or rather a colt, as opposed to Silver Knott, who's a gelding. So I'm sure that they would rather have the colt win the Breeders' Cup Turf if they can get him to be that kind of horse. So I put measured time on top, but it's pretty much a coin flip for me between these two.
Yeah, 4, 1, 2 for me. I put the logical Silver Knott on top, and what I did is I put Soldier Rising in second, where he likes to finish right between the two of them. So I'll go 4, 1, 2, 2, 4, 3 for David in the Sword Dancer. However you're playing, we wish you the best of luck.